Move to approve Erpenbach.
Second, Karski.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That passes 3-0. Next will be review and approval of minutes dated January 14th, 2014.
Move to approve Erpenbach.
Second.
Okay, I have motion approval for that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That also passes 3-0. First item on the agenda tonight will be the ambulance service RFP project update by Julie Charbonneau and Joe Franken.
Good evening. Jill Franken, Public Health Director for the City of Sioux Falls, and I'm pleased to come and share with you an update on where we have been and where we're heading with the ambulance service contract, which will be due up mid-year 2015. So it's going to be my job to share with you a little bit, remind you of a little history of where we've come to this point, and then Julie will come up and give you a little update on some of the activities that will be occurring in the next few weeks. So as you recall, and as I just mentioned, the ambulance service contract is due up in May of 2015. And so we've been preparing for well over a year for this, where we're at today and where we're heading over this next year and couple months' time. To do what we did when we started meeting over a year ago was really took a look at the scope of the work that would be required to complete this project, what would be the timeline needed, and how best to proceed overall. At that time, we landed on the idea that we really did believe that an RFP process would be a way to go, and being most conservative, we identified that we could, as needed, and if we want to take the most conservative approach fiscally, was to do most of the work in-house, and actually had budgeted for the 2014 budget a little bit of dollars to be able to have some consulting work done, but have it be more of a local consultant. About that same time, then, we had also requested that an audit be completed, and that audit then was brought before all of you. And a couple of the things that Rich Oaksall identified in the audit report were that supported what we needed to do moving forward with this process to secure a contract was he really concurred that the current system of design was optimal for a community of this size and where we're at this time, which is important for us to all be in agreement on, so that we're not looking at system design in this process, but really looking at a system that currently exists and how we will be able to find the right ambulance service to move that forward. He did recommend an RFP approach to select a provider, and then a contract with an EMS expert to lead the RFP process. So while he felt that he agreed with us that an RFP process was the best approach, he did recommend that we contract with an expert out there in the country. And you all supported those findings and actually lended additional support with your 2014 budget, which included then the expense allocation for that, to find that RFP consultant. So then the next step was City Attorney Dave Fifley set out to help find and work with some folks to come up with some recommendations for us to consider in terms of who we might utilize for that work. And he brought some options to a committee, or a work group, I should say, that's been formed of City Attorney Fifley, Chief Sedaris, Jeff Helm, Chad Olson, who's a REMSA chair, Dr. Jeff Luther, Alicia Klura, Sandy Friends, Julie Charbonneau, and myself. And of the few that were recommended that were even really met the basic criteria we had come up with, Fitch and Associates was selected as the RFP consultant to work with. And they've done work in Sioux Falls with us before, and work in this area, and they had a price that was, they had the most reasonable price to do this work. And so we did then extend a contract to them, which you approved at the end of the year, and we've started working with them. So with that introduction, I'll turn it over to Julie, who's our EMS Quality Assurance Coordinator, and she's also project manager for this work, and let her talk about what we're going to be doing in the next few weeks.
Julie Charbonneau, Quality Assurance Coordinator in the Health Department for EMS. So Jill filled you in that we're going to be utilizing Fitch & Associates, and I've been in contact quite a bit with Jay Fitch, who's the head of that company, planning how the timeline will go, how they'll collect data, what kind of support they'll be offering. Jay and one of his partners will be here in March. They'll conduct some initial stakeholder interviews. So they'll be meeting with council leadership, with Public Services Committee Chair, also with Jill Franken, the Public Health Director. They're going to be talking with Jim Sedaris, the Fire Chief. They will be talking with the current ambulance provider, with all the receiving hospitals, with Dr. Jeff Luther, who's the REMSA Medical Director, and with the REMSA Board and the REMSA Medical Board. So I have all those meetings scheduled. And then I will be letting Jim David know of any additional openings in that schedule. So if other council members would like the opportunity to talk to Dr. Fitch, we can get that set up. So that will happen in March. They'll also start at that time and gather data about the current system. They'll be getting some information from 911, from the current provider. And they'll put all that together and analyze that, put that information together to use to develop the RFP. That whole process of data gathering and analysis will take about 3 months. And about that time, we'll come back and let you know the next steps, because that'll be drafting the RFP, and we'll keep you up to date on how that's going. So my plan is to come to you about every 3 months with an update. If there's something you need from us sooner, though, just let us know. Let me know. You can get in touch with me or with Jill at the Health Department. So those are the next steps.
Okay. Thank you, Julie. Any questions from the committee? Okay. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you. See you in a quarter or so.
Okay. Is there anything else that we need as an update on that, Jill, or are we okay? All right. I do already have a meeting scheduled March 13th with the hired person from Fitch & Associates. If either one of you or any of the committee members want to join, I can give you a date and time and everything that's happening.
Great.
Okay. Moving on to the next item on the agenda would be vehicle for hire ordinance. Because of shortness of time, we're not going to do an overview, but I would like Jamie Palmer to come up, please.
Good evening, Jamie Palmer with licensing.
Good evening, Jamie. I just wanted to ask one question, and that is if you had a version of the application.
I do.
And if the council or if the committee members could see that version.
Certainly. Do we want to do the... I don't know how to run this. Run it up on the overhead?
Yes, that'd be fine. Then you can explain any of the changes just so that we can see it. I know that was something of interest, if I'm still correct on that.
Is there something I have to push to make that change, or? Oh, there we go.
Oh, that's why it was showing. There we go.
Some of this information that's in this document, I've got draft plastered across it, but it did get used in the most recent renewal period that I've just done. Some of it has just been changed recently. So Overall, the first part of it is the business information, just pretty generic information. That's where they provide the sales tax number, which I do verify with the state sales tax office. I email him and just verify that their number is correct and current, and so I do have a very good working relationship with him on that. So I do that with every application that comes in. The second section is simply the actual business owner's personal information. And the next part is the location from which the vehicles will operate, and that's essentially where they're going to be parked when they're not being used. And that is a location that I do have to get approved from zoning. So when whatever address they put there, I send zoning an email and say, this is their parking locale, is it approved? And then they do let me know if it is. And they also have to disclose the number of vehicles that are going to be operated. And that's the second page then, lists out the vehicle specifically, the license plate, the number of passengers that each vehicle will carry. And then this is something I just added. I know that it's been kind of a topic of discussion of, if the vehicle is going to be equipped with a taximeter. I'm trying that. It's not anything that's set in stone, but I just thought, well, it's somewhere where we can disclose that if they actually do have a taximeter. And this other section is to be completed by me when they turn it in. I'm checking to make sure that each vehicle has a vehicle inspection form, that each vehicle has an insurance card attached, and then this is the column that I assign the tag number when I actually get to that point. The section down below, I'm asking them to disclose the names of their vehicle operators, and then I don't think you can see that very well. And then that section to be completed, I'm verifying with the police department that each individual driver is licensed. So. And the third page, or the last page, I'm asking them, basically I'm verifying that they've submitted to me a certificate of liability. And then this is something new that I've added, is to actually put the agent's name and their email address. Because a lot of them I do have a pretty good working relationship with. They contact me, hey, what's going on here? I can do the same for them. So I just thought that was important to have that information. And then we did add the question about the alcoholic beverage carrier's license. So they have disclosed, I do have the information now of who has them and who doesn't. And then these two standard questions, those are set by ordinance, so those are on there for that reason.
Okay. And this is just still a draft, correct? We still have some other changes that are coming?
Yeah, certainly it's open for changes or recommendations or whatever, but I am, like I said, I did currently use some of this information when I just did my renewal. So, but yeah, it's open for changes and suggestions.
Any questions from committee? Okay, thank you, Jamie.
Can I take just one more moment and show you the inspection form and then the draft that I have come up with too? Are you guys interested in seeing that real quick?
Yes. Okay.
This is the current form, and I'm sure you guys all have this in your books. It's pretty basic information. They just, mainly when they turn that in, it's got, checklist, just that they've checked everything. Now, the one I'm going to put up there next is like just a draft. It's just something I kind of threw together just at the recommendation of another city's form that they used, and they'll be highlighting on it, which will kind of indicate what is not on this form. If it's not highlighted, it's currently being checked on this form. So. So it's just a little different look to it, essentially. But like I said, it's a lot of the same information. The highlighted items are what I couldn't find on our current form. And so they wouldn't have to be there. None of it has to be there, but it's all open for recommendations or changes as you see that you'd like changed as well. So.
Councilman Karski, you had a question?
I did. You brought up something I hadn't thought about, Jamie, and that's parking and where the vehicle's located. And I don't know if you can answer this, but our ordinance regarding if you have a vehicle that has commercial lettering or is obviously a commercial vehicle, can it be parked in a residential area on the street or strictly in a driveway? Are you aware?
Well, that information this is a memo that I give to any people that are inquiring about it, and it does have a paragraph on there that says commercial vehicles are not permitted to be parked or stored in any residential district unless required for the performance of a service required at that particular residence. So that is why if somebody is asking that they park their vehicle at their home, then I have to send it to zoning, and then they determine, yep, it's a residential home, and then they contact the applicant to obtain what's called a home occupation permit, which would allow them to park the vehicle at their home.
Okay. And I would imagine then that would probably have some input from neighbors too, or doesn't that go through that process?
I honestly don't know the answer to that question.
Just curious.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Jamie. Okay, now due to the shortness of time, we're not going to have a presentation from Mr. David. We're going to open it up to public testimony. So first I'd like to know, if possible, how many people out here in the crowd is going to want to testify? Maybe a show of hands so I can judge, how we can segment out some time here to give you a little more than the 5 minutes. Okay. All right. Well, now I'm taking public testimony, or we are taking public testimony. If you would like to start, sir.
I was sent documentation to come to this
If I
meeting.
could have you give your name.
Tom
please.
Wiki, Ambassador Car Service.
Thank you.
I'm a private service, so I'm in the general category, not the taxi category.
Can you lift the mics up a little bit so everybody can hear you better? Thank you, sir.
Okay. My major concern is, like you just brought up, the parking of, it's my personal vehicle, so I park it at my residence. No one ever comes to my residence. I don't advertise. It's strictly word of mouth is how you find out about my business. And I operate strictly on a per call. Somebody calls me, I go get them. That's how my business operates. So I'm different than the taxi division because they operate like dispatch, for instance. Yellow Cab has a dispatcher. So, there's all of them operate a little different based on size. But I'm a one-car service. I only operate 4 days a week. So my concern in these ordinances is I saw the 24/7 service and the advertising on the outside of the vehicle. I don't do any of that.
Right.
So,
And I don't believe you would fall under that. Now, does your license plates, are they just regular license plate? or
no,
are they
they're commercial. I have to have commercial, otherwise I get a ticket for $167 for overcapacity because I could only haul 500 pounds worth of product, as the officer says.
Well, the only thing I would suggest then is that you speak to our licensing specialist, just to make sure that you're within the ordinance for parking your vehicle and your home.
Well, I've already got a home occupation permit from the business division, so I've already paid that fee and everything's good there.
That sounds about right.
Okay?
Is there any questions from? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other people that would like to testify at this time?
Hi, Tally Kinsley, Yellow Cab. I would just like to say that I think we've come a long way with where we started, and I know it's been very cumbersome, for everybody. But I think the new application is really, really thorough. I would just like to see one thing that added to that if they're applying for more than one vehicle for hire decal for the car, and she's got them listing their drivers, which is great, but nowhere on there that I can see does it ask who their work comp carrier is, and that's a huge expense, very huge expense, that if their drivers are independent or employees, if employees, who is your work comp carrier, I think that would make it so that, and then on the driver's application for the people that are driving for them to ask if they are independent or employees, and that way those can be cross-referenced. If they're not independent, then they should carry work comp on them. If they're independent, then each driver needs to be licensed. And I think that's the only thing that's really missing. Other than that, I think she did a great job on it's very thorough. That was one of my biggest concerns, is that issue. And I'd just like to ask also that if there was some way we could meet with the city council, not in a public setting, and go over the items one by one, because to do it as a whole, I think it's made it more cumbersome, actually, because there's a lot of questions and suggestions that I have that I don't think can be done in 5 minutes time. I have questions about the license or the inspections. I have questions about the sealing of the meters. I have some suggestions on the surcharge. A lot of things that I think need to be discussed more thorough than with the 5-minute public input time, So I'd like to ask that, maybe we could sit down each individual company or as a whole or something that's not in a public setting where you only have your 5 minutes to be able to discuss each item and give some suggestions and concerns and that kind of thing. But there's a lot, I think we've made a lot of headway. I think there's a lot, we've come a long way and accomplished a lot. And Jim David's done a lot of work. He's got his hands full. I think he's a busy person. But anyway, that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, one moment. Questions, Counselor?
Tally, correct?
Right.
What I would encourage you to do is either contact the counselors individually or contact Jim David and tell him you'd like to set up appointments to meet with 1 or 2 or 3 counselors at a time, whoever would be interested in talking to you. That's what I've experienced most people do if they have questions on zoning or pending ordinance. Sit down and over a cup of coffee in 30 or 45 minutes we can discuss your concerns. I find that to be much more productive, and if there's just me or me and 2 other counselors, I'm okay with that. But I think it would benefit you greatly to reach out through Mr. David or to each one of us individually if you have concerns you'd like to address to one of us or on that level.
Okay. And also, I'd like to invite anybody of the council to our facility to kind of get an idea and see how our dispatch office works and where our cars are stored and where our mechanics shop is, and just if it helps at all to give you an idea of how how we operate our business, just for informational, if nothing else. I'd like to add that I feel that Yellow Cab, even before Brendan and I came into it, it was his dads before him and his grandparents before them. And I think that Yellow Cabs kind of set the standards for the taxi industry in the city because they were the only taxi company for so many years. And I guess what I'm asking is that the other companies be held to the same standards, because in order to stay viable and compete, I don't want to have to lower ours, A lot of the stuff that we've done isn't mandated, painting the cars yellow and that kind of thing. I realize that we're not being forced to do that. But the other companies aren't being held to that standard, and somehow I feel that if we're going to be able to compete with how easy it is, I don't want to have to lower ours, And so that's one of my concerns too. It's just for the sake of competition, to be able to keep up. So, having said that, I'll take you up on that. Brendan and I will get together and we'll make contact, maybe through email or phone or whatever. I think that's a good idea.
I will also back that up. I believe the email that you sent to the council, I think really did generate some interest.
Oh, good.
And some questions. So I think that is the best way to approach all of us.
Okay.
On some
If
issues.
that's the, you know, if
And
that's
even
productive, I'll do that.
Issues are. I think that makes it a lot easier. And I will say, contact Jim David, because he's a valuable resource to each and every one of us.
Yeah, I know Brent's called him a couple times and they've talked and he's made some suggestions, so it's been helpful. Thanks.
Any other, Councilor Urfenbach?
I just wanted to add too that I think, you know, number one, that I appreciate that you and your husband both and the other folks that are here have been so willing to meet with us in public forum. That's the most important part of this process, is that we are doing this in a very open, transparent way. Everything's on live television. You can go back and watch it on the web. That's huge to us because it helps us then hear from other folks, because it is not just about the taxi industry. It really is about the consumers as well. And so we're hearing from them because they have heard you say, you know, thus and such on TV. And so that's very helpful. But the thing that I would echo is what Councilor Anderson said. I've read every one of the letters you've sent us. We've taken all of that into account in terms of, you know, the issues that are of concern to you. And so I just would you know, thank all of you for your participation in the process. And I'm going to take you up on the tour of your facility. I'll give you an email and see if we
Okay.
can set something up, because you know, that would be interesting to me. I'm kind of a tour geek anyway, and so it would be fun. But I would like to understand the business a little bit more, and so I would.
Okay,
I'll be
yeah,
doing
we'd be
that.
happy to do that.
Yeah.
So
I just wanted to say that I know this process has been long, but you guys and all of you folks have been really well involved with it, and I just appreciate everybody's just keeping with it and going line by line, because we have really gone line by line on this whole thing.
Right, right. And the same, you know, we appreciate your attention to it as well. So,
Thanks.
Anything else? No. Thank you.
thanks.
Any other testimony?
Tom Warner, First Choice Taxi. Had a chance to read the latest update on the table over there. On the vehicle signs and markings, if there was a possibility, right now it's stating it has to be on the side of the door. If there's the ability to also have the markings on the windows, I know we utilize that a lot because we can make it more bigger and visible. I would like to see if there's any way that could be added in there to give us a little more flexibility rather than just on the doors. The other downside to having it on the doors is with the sun from the summertime and things like that, it really fades into that paint and it devalues that car even more than it has to.
Could I ask a
Councilor
question
Offenbach?
while you're in the midst of it? I apologize. I just want to be clear. On your windows, I know you have them on the backs of the cars. I've seen that.
Yes,
Do
ma'am.
you where else would you have them on the window? Are they on the side windows then?
We have it across our windshield so that you can see it from the front. We have it on the rear windows, and then on our vans and SUVs, we have it on the big side windows.
Okay. Okay. So if we said door and or windows or something, that would help you with that?
Yeah, as long as we were just meeting the minimum size requirement that you're looking for, a little flexibility there would be nice.
Okay. Thank you for letting me interrupt.
You know, just open to interpretation, I guess. I would assume that the windows are part of the door, and by putting them on the windows, you probably are meeting the requirement of putting them on the door.
Well, like on our SUV, we have it on the very far back window, so that way it interferes with vision, you know, as less as possible. You know, so that wouldn't classify as a door necessarily.
I'm not against this, but I think that we should bring the ideal to law enforcement also for distracted driving. I think there might be something out there about what they can put, size on windows, something like that.
Can we ask Jim David to do that for us? Just follow up on that? Because you're right, but I know there's a lot of businesses that
Just
are doing
something
that.
When you first asked, something came into my mind saying,
To
we
my-
might take a look at that, just to see the legal aspect of it.
Yeah, to my understanding, as long as you have both outside mirrors, because a lot of businesses will, they'll do a solid vinyl over those back windows, like on service vans and things like that. So I don't believe there is a requirement on that, but, you know, if we could check into that, that'd be nice.
Okay.
And that's all I had.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else like to testify? We do have a little more time.
Come up.
Please come up.
There.
Lars Pietruszkiewicz, the AAA taxi. I would like to ask you again about that permanent signage. I went and how to cover, because I do 3 different things. I teaching driving as well. Like yesterday I drive, and put that and cover that is not really available to cover. Then I have to have huge sign, and I don't know why I should not be able get the magnetic so I can change if I have a driving for hire or I have a teaching how to drive. You know, that makes me very, very, the rest I'm fine. I can display the price and everything on the windows. That's not a problem. But it's just a problem how to do when I'm driving and I have to put student driver in the back. I have student driver, and that's yellow. And on top, I made it also on top what is not required on a taxi. I can take it that because it's magnetic, but the side one is permanent. It will be hard to cover me.
Discussion? Questions?
Well, if I might, just from my perspective, one of my things about this entire ordinance is the impermanence of many of these taxi companies. And I think you're the best example. You know, I appreciate that you are, you know, an entrepreneur and that you are running these businesses out of one vehicle, but that's where I struggle in that it's not a permanent one-use only vehicle. And so that's where, I mean, for me anyway, that's where this permanent signage has come from, is that idea that we feel, or I feel, and I've heard from consumers that it feels like many of our taxi companies, because they're not labeled, because there isn't a uniform code for any of that, that it feels fly-by-night and it does not feel safe. And I want to get over that. I want to be able to say to people, every taxi company that's licensed in the city of Sioux Falls is a permanent good business. And I cannot say that at this point.
Well, if it's not displayed magnetic, then I understand. But if it's displayed magnetic, it's the same thing. So I can change, but it has to be displayed, then I understand it has to be displayed. It's magnetic, it's permanent. You put in when you're doing the business. When you're not doing that business, I can change. And it's a schedule that I have to go teaching for a couple hours to students, and then I'm not doing taxi. But when I'm doing taxi, I need to change quick, and then what?
Right, and I understand that. I'm just saying, for me, that's where this comes from. And I am only one vote of 8.
Yeah, but then also is a plate and there's windows showing that is a taxi at that time. When it's taxi, when it's not taxi, then it's a student driver.
Yep. Councilman Karski, any questions, comments?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, before, I'm sorry, I do have to slip out. I do have an appointment at 6:30. Thank you.
Yeah, a couple things, and I don't know if Mr. Pietruszkiewicz needs to stay up there for it, but I agree with a lot of what Councilor, in fact, probably all of what Councilor Erpenbach is saying. We do need to have a level playing field. Tally talked about, that, but I think more importantly, it is a regulated service that the city of Sioux Falls is, and every city takes upon themselves to regulate their for-hire vehicles. And based on that, our public has an expectation and a reasonable right to safety and acceptable standards from when we license a cab, what they expect when they get into it. If we do have a signage requirement on there, you're going to have to find a way to work with it, I guess, is the best thing I can tell you. I don't know if we can make exceptions. In fact, I know we can't make exceptions based on that.
But according to the city ordinance, if this will be required, it's just a matter that I can take it and put in. Then police can punish that driver if the sign is not there. Doesn't matter what kind. There should be punishment. You're driving as a taxi right now. Where's your sign? And get the ticket. So they all learn that I have to change that. But it's hard to me if I'm doing different business and now I can't cover because it's different letter, different name. It's hard to cover everything, and it's really hard on the vehicle. Especially my vehicle has ability that I can put the pedal when I need it for safety, or I take it out when I'm doing taxi. So it's prepared for both way. And I spend a lot of money for that, and it's a expensive insurance for do the driving education. It's more expensive than taxi.
So if you have a permanent sign on your vehicle that identifies you as a taxi cab, you can get magnetic signs that change that could go over that when you're not using it as a taxi. Is that what you're saying, or?
No, I would like to, like I have magnetic for taxi and I have magnetic for driving education, and it's two different sizes because different letters required. And signage is different size and can't cover. I tried and it doesn't work. I went to the company, they said, well, can't make it that way. So I just thinking, I have signage, I have license, I have plate, and I dress up nicely so people can recognize this is a taxi, and they will see it's taxi because it's show taxi, or is a school at that present time I'm teaching how to drive.
Les, I want to say thank you for your testimony on this. We understand that it's the permanent markings that that you're concerned about. I think the best thing I can say right now is that the committee and the city council will take that under advisement, and we'll have to have some discussions about that.
Can we ask for exception? Can I ask for that? That can be done.
You already have, sir. That's exactly what you're doing right now. You're asking for an exception. Once again, that will have to come at a more, the decision will have to come at a later time after the council has some discussions about it.
Thank you.
But at least we will, I'll say at least one thing is that I'll bring that up in discussions with the other council members to judge their opinions on that also.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're very welcome, sir. Is there anyone else that would like to testify at this time? Councilman Karski, you had a question?
I had a question for Jamie on that licensing application. It was brought up that I need to have commercial tags on my vehicle. Is that a requirement on all for-hire vehicles? Is that part of the requirement of your application to check for commercial tags?
It is. Yep.
It is. And I don't know the advantage or disadvantage. I heard the question regarding identifying your cab drivers if they're employees or independent contractors, and I'm struggling with that a little bit and part of another conversation, but is there any reason why we would not have the federal tax ID number on the application?
Well, it's interesting you asked that. We met, Jim David, myself, Keith Allenstein, met with the sales tax, Darren Gary, and I'm not going to remember his name, Scott from the Department of Labor, and there was I can't remember her name either, but there was another woman there too, and we were trying to determine if there was certain things that we could ask, such as, are you an employee or contractor? And we didn't really get a definitive answer if we could or couldn't. We did discuss some other ideas of things we could ask for, because like right now when I ask for the sales tax, like I said, Darren, Gary, and I have a good working relationship. I just email them and say, this is the number they provided, this is the information, is this true, correct? He can respond back to me, yes. Now, there was some question on asking them to provide federal tax ID number or other identification numbers, if we could do that with the Department of Labor. And I don't know that we really for sure got a solid answer on that. We haven't heard back from them on that. So at this point, that's kind of where we're at.
The gentleman's at the Department of Labor?
He's with the Department of Revenue, with the Sales Tax Office. So,
Okay,
yep.
okay.
Now, for a taxi company owner, we do ask for a tax ID, correct?
Correct.
So if their employees were independent contractors, they should be providing a tax ID also.
Sales tax.
Correct, which brings us to the point, if they have their own sales tax, they should probably be applying for a business license as well.
Correct, because if I'm right in our conversations that we've had, is if they're independent contractor, that means they're independent of being directed by the company, hours worked or
Set
things
their own
like
schedule,
that, correct?
have their own vehicle.
They're pretty much freelance. So if they're not an independent contractor, that goes back to the question of the workman's comp insurance question, and whether we should have that on the application also. You know, I guess, are your employees independent contractors or, you know, employees per the state of South Dakota, SD, whatever?
Part of the issue came up that a lot of people think they know what an independent contractor is, and it's really not what it is. So asking the question might not really get us the information we need. So,
Councilman Karski?
I've experienced that a lot too, Jamie, where people think that, you know, just because I call you an independent contractor, that you are an independent contractor. And typically the IRS has a field day with that type of a thing, and you find out how wrong you are when you're up against the IRS. You know, that being said, I don't know why we would be in the position of regulating whether they carry work comp insurance or not. That's a State Department of Labor requirement, and I think I'd prefer to leave that up to them. That's a labor issue and not a Sioux Falls city ordinance issue.
I guess to reply to that, though, I think one of the things that we were looking at as we were improving this ordinance is the wording, I believe it's in the ordinance, that says that they must be in compliance with local and state. So, I mean, that's just a general question. We're not trying to enforce it. We're just trying to see how their drivers are protected, their employees are protected. So that's why I'm sort of asking, as you are, asking these questions on how we want to set up that application, if we want to have those type of questions on there, or should. And I think it's good that we are questioning Department of Revenue, Department of Labor, to try to get those answers. Anything else? Jim?
The only thing that I was going to add is during those discussions, we talked about the federal tax ID number and also a unemployment insurance number. And the concern was from the Department of Labor, that's private information. If that gets out in the public, it could be abused. One of the options was a certificate of good standing from the Department of Labor. We're still waiting to hear if that is an alternative, or just Jamie placing a call to confirm that they are in compliance. So that was the other alternative.
Darren Gary said that he would get up and maybe explain some of the confidentiality issues just briefly, if you wanted him to do that.
Fine, thank you.
Darren Gary, Senior Revenue Agent with the Department of Revenue. A lot of our issues, when they call us, we can say yes, they have a license, or no, they do not. That's about all we're going to be able to sell, just because of the IRS confidentiality rules that we're held to. And I think it's the same way with the Department of Labor. I don't work with them. Don't want to tell you their rules, but that's some of their issue.
Any questions?
Not really, but thank you for being here.
The only one I'm very happy that you're working with our staff here to try to, mold that application into something that, we can utilize efficiently to make sure that our cabs are operating safely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for spending your time here. I've seen you sitting in the crowd, and I was wondering what issue you were here for. So, any other questions? Tally, I'll let you come up one more time here. Then we're going to have to probably close this down so we can get ready for the council meeting.
Regarding the IRS issues, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the reason I bring that up is because if you do have employees, then you have to have a federal tax ID number, right? If you have employees. And there are a lot of employee payroll taxes that are involved with that. And the reason I ask that be put on the application is because if they do have employees and they're treating them like employees, they have to pay the taxes, they have to carry the work comp, and those are huge expenses. And if they're being able to bypass that, we can't compete with that. Is the reason that I bring that up, that should be in place, because if they are going to treat them as employees, they have to withhold the taxes from their employees' paychecks, they have to pay the taxes, and they have to carry work comp on their employees. And I'm afraid that if that's not addressed, it'd be easy to sidestep that and bypass a lot of expenses that we pay out. That's my reason for the concern, not to get into anybody's private, but so that fair competition, we're all on the same playing field, that kind of thing. And so that's why I bring that issue up. Okay. I just wanted to clarify that.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Can we take action with just the two of us here?
No.
Thank you.
Also, I was going to ask that we leave this in committee right now due to some conversations with the administration on how we're going to enforce this. And I think that has to be part of this whole conversation. Yeah. So, do we have anything else we'd like to discuss at this time, Councilman Karski? We have the house.
Just you and me. Yeah. No, I'm good.
All right. With that, and I guess with that, we will adjourn this meeting. Thank you.